Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here chatting with all of you. And today my name is Shilpa, and I'll be covering the interview preparation guidelines for product management candidates. So, a little bit about myself. First of all, thank you so much to PWIC for giving me this opportunity to be here, and also to Indian Women in Computing and Nepali Women in Computing who are helping out with this event as well. It is a pleasure to be able to give back to the community all the insights that I have gathered and learned in my 20 years in tech industry. So who am I? Well, my name is Shilpa Vir, and I'm currently working as a senior product manager at Google. I specifically work in Google Ads. Apart from this, I run a job interview and career coaching business at shilpavir.com, through which I have helped several candidates land their dream jobs. I'm also working on launching my second startup, which is Zero Entropy Solutions, and I'm the chairman for that company. Prior to Google, I have worked in a bunch of different startups and big name companies. So my initial experience has been all with startups, and I ran my own startup for a few years as well. And then I got into some big names, companies like Yahoo, HP, Microsoft, and most recently eBay, where I was a group product manager managing the entire buyer-seller communication platform. I like to give back to community. This community has helped me so much, and I like to give back by I manage a women in product group on Facebook, the Southway product group. I write articles on Medium, and specifically in women in tech category. And any of you who is looking to go to a career fair, any kind of career fair, I have a series of articles targeted for Grace Hopper, but they are valid for anybody going through any kind of career fair. So I highly recommend you read them and check them out. In addition, I speak as a moderator, panelist, organizer at many, many different events. And most notably, I have given 5 presentations at Grace Hopper in the past 5 years. And this year, I'll be speaking on nailing your behavioral interviews. So that's just a little bit about me. But let's get into it. Product management. Before we get into how do we prepare for a PM position or product interview questions, let's just talk about what is product management. And you might have heard about words like product owner, product manager, product marketing manager, program manager. Well, they're all somewhat interrelated, but I'm going to be focusing specifically on product manager role here. And towards the end, if the time permits and if there's interest, I can go in the nuances of how the different roles overlap and differentiate. But the role of a product manager is simple. Your goal is to build products that matter and building them the right way. How do you know which products to build? For that, you need to understand what are the market conditions. What do the customers want? What pain points are they facing? And what is that they're trying to achieve? Or what do they want the product to help them achieve? You need to understand the business aspects. What is marketable? What are the revenue or profit margins that you could possibly build in? How can you make a product profitable? You need to understand the business aspects of it to understand what are the right products to build. But then you also have to look inward in the company and say, how do you build those products the right way? And for that, you need to look into your organization and figure out how do you leverage the current resources that you have at your disposal in building that product. And what should that product be? What should be the minimum viable product features? What should be the delight creators? What should be the pain relievers in that particular product? And how should you roll that out? And a person who can navigate all 4 of these areas is a successful product manager. So my definition of a good product management person is, or product management is that product management is a cross-functional leadership role whose job it is to achieve product success in line with company objectives. So many times I see candidates who are very creative and they can build some really, really good products, but they fail to take into account the business aspect of it. And they build products that are not sellable. HoloLens, for example, or the Snap glasses, cool products, but can't sell. But then I also see sometimes products that can sell very well, but can't solve a customer's problem. Or really cool products, but the customer doesn't need them. And so if you want to be successful in product management, you need to build muscles that can help you navigate all four of these areas and build the right product in the right way. Now let's talk about the product management interview process. If you think you have what it takes to be a successful product manager, you need to go and get a product management job, right? And in fact, that is why all of you are here. So a typical product management interview process starts with a resume screen. And this resume screen can happen either by the recruiter, so somebody actually reading your resume, or it can happen through an application tracking system, which is a computer program that takes in all the resumes and ranks you with a percentage of how well you match the job description. And then only the top rated candidates are looked at. And so when you are writing your product management resume, you need to make sure that your product management resume has all the right keywords and the kind of phrases that help you get past the ATS system or shows a good match with the role. That's why the generic resumes don't do as well as targeted resumes. And then you also have to make sure that you are communicating your work experience in a way that gets the recruiter, the hiring manager excited about shortlisting your resume and calling you for a recruiter screen. So this is where you have to talk about your accomplishments as if you were talking about a friend, because we are so good at talking about all the good things our friends do, but so bad when it comes to talking about ourselves. And so we have to put that hesitation aside, build a stellar resume, make sure it's targeted and gets past the hiring manager, the recruiter, and the ATS system. Then comes the round of recruiter screen. And this is the round where they are assessing a few things. They're assessing your communication skills. They are assessing whether or not you have certain domain experience that might be relevant, whether or not you seem like the kind of person you made yourself out to be in the resume. So if your resume says that you are great at X, Y, and Z, but then you can't communicate that in the phone, they're not going to trust you. This is not the place where you can expect very technical questions, although for some TPM roles, I have had recruiters ask me some really technical questions as well. So after this round is the actual interview process. And it normally starts with phone interviews. Some companies do one round of phone interviews, some companies do two. After the phone interviews, again, some companies will do behavioral over there, but some companies will actually make you do a product case study. And the different companies have different processes here. Some companies are very well published. So Google, Facebook, Lyft, for example, their phone interview styles are pretty well known, so you can prepare very well. But for all the others, you need to have some generic preparation. And then if you pass that round, you will have an on-site loop, which consists 4 to 5, and in some cases, even more interviews. Let me pause here for a minute so you can digest that. And then let's move on to what actually is being covered in these interviews. So when you are preparing for a product management interview, you are going to be preparing for specific interviews or a generic interview. But in general, you can expect the interviews to cover these categories. So I've listed the categories and I've listed a sample question for those categories also, so you can get some idea. The most common product related skill that is tested in these interviews is product design. This could be, hey, design an alarm clock, design Uber for blind, design what's your favorite product and how would you improve it? And so a sample question here is suggest a new feature for Amazon. What metrics would you use to measure its success? So here the important part is to not design it for yourself. You are not the user, you are a product manager. And so it is very important that you put yourself in the shoes of the user and first define who the user is, and then what would they want out of this product, and then come up with the solution. The second category is product strategy questions. As senior as you get in your career, this will become even more and more important. But even for entry level questions or entry level interviews, there is elements of product strategy that get tested. So an example is, should Amazon get into the ride sharing business? And here you have to think from multiple angles. You have to think about whether this is the right fit for the company from their current product portfolio perspective. You have to think about whether or not it's a good area in general to get into. And number three, does the company have the kind of resources it would need in order to do a good job in this? Another area that gets tested is execution and leadership, because product managers not only come up with the product, they are also responsible for launching and landing that product. And so how you take an idea from concept to market is very important. And how do you work with all the different areas in your company? Finance, legal, PR, UX, engineering, all of those, how do you work with them is important as well. And so they want to understand how you work with different people and how do you get an idea from concept to launch. Some companies do analytical thinking in number sense. Google, for example, has a particular round of called estimation, where they give you a question like, how many iPads are sold in US every year? And they're trying to understand how good you are with data. Every single company will have a behavioral interview also, because they want to understand whether or not you fit in their company culture. And every company might be looking at slightly different type of people. So it takes a particular type of person to be successful in a given environment. And there are a set of values that a company holds very near and dear. And so through the behavioral interviews, they're trying to figure out if you are that kind of person or not. And some companies also care about technical. In fact, some roles care about technical. So there are some product management roles which don't have a lot of technical knowledge required. But then there are certain roles. For example, if you are the product manager on a data science platform, or if you're a product manager on very, very technical hardware product, you do need to understand the technology behind it. And so the relative importance of technical interview might be different depending on the company and role, but there are technical interviews in several companies that you will have to clear in order to get the job. And finally, if you are going for a manager position where you have to manage other people, they would have a people management interview as well to get an understanding of how is that you manage and grow a team. So if I have to suggest where to spend most time, I would say spend most time on product design, behavioral interviews, execution and leadership first. Then add analytical thinking, number sense, and strategy on top of it. And finally, depending on the role, you want to brush up on technical knowledge as well. So now let's get into what is an interviewer looking for? So here I see that there are several books out in the market who promote certain frameworks. And they are great, great, great frameworks because it helps you align your thoughts into a logical answer. But the interviewer is not looking for a specific framework or a ready-made answer. So if you go in and say, hey, if the question is, how will you build or build a refrigerator, and you start going in through a framework, but if you don't do a good job of actually designing a good refrigerator, you have not been successful. So they are not looking for a specific framework, but they are looking to understand what is your approach for building the products. What have you built so far? So that's clear from your resume to a certain extent, but they want you to come and add more color to it so they can understand what is that you've built and how you've built it. But then they also want to understand what is your approach for building products. The main reason why we ask questions like, how would you build this? Or how will you take this to market? Is not because we are looking to get some ideas. Some people think that, oh, they're asking me to do this take home exercise. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that in between the recruiter screen and the on-site, some companies also do take home assignments where they will give you a prompt and you will have to go back and put together a presentation and then come back and present to the panel. Amazon does a writing exercise. There are other companies who would do a full PowerPoint exercise. So I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. But coming back to here, when we are thinking about, if I ask you, when I'm asking you a particular question, what I'm trying to understand is how do you take a concept and how you evaluate that concept? How do you know that that's the right pain point to work on? How do you know what to build to solve it? And how do you know how to test that and get the feedback from the customers? So I really want to understand, if I hired you as a product manager and tried to put you on a project, can I expect you to be successful, or will you be needing a lot of hand-holding? So when I'm giving you a prompt, it is not to harness ideas. Some people have this notion that companies are asking us to do all this work so they can harness all these ideas from us and then build products. Trust me, the ideas that you come up with most likely have already been discussed in the company. There is very, very few times when somebody will come with up an idea that has not yet already been discussed or brought up by somebody else. And so those exercises or these interview questions are not a way to trip you or to get free work out of you or whatever. It is simply to say, if we were to hire this person, can we expect them to be successful? Can we expect them to build the quality products that we want to build? The third, how do you prioritize features and competing tasks? In an ideal world, whatever you want to build, there is going to be unlimited resource, unlimited time, and a lot of flexibility available. But in reality, that does not happen. Every company is short on resources. Every company is short on budget, and every company is trying to go as fast as possible. So your time, resource, and money are pretty much always limited. And on top of it, the company needs to deliver 5 products, not just one. And so as a product manager, you will routinely find yourself in situations where you are having to prioritize how you spend your time and resources. And you have to decide between keeping a certain product alive or killing it, building a product or not building it. And so companies want to understand what is your approach to prioritization and how do you handle all these conflicts. They also want to see how you communicate. Can you talk about technical concepts with non-technical people? Can you can you take business requirements and convert them in a way that engineering gets excited about? So your communication skills in your interview show them a good idea of how it would be like working with you. As an interviewer, I also want to know, if I give you a vague, complex problem, how will you break it down and solve them? How do you move a Mount Everest from one place to another? The answer is one shovel at a time. And so that's the same approach here. In the interview, you're given a really huge, complex problem, and you're asked to do something, and they want to see, do you know how to break it down? Do you do it step by step or not? Next, domain expertise. There are companies who hire for generalists, but there are roles and there are places where domain expertise matters. Why? And I think the both of them matter, to be honest. If you are a generalist, companies know that you can today work on project A, but then tomorrow you can be working on product B with equal ease. And so you are a person, or you are a resource, or you are a product manager who can cover a lot of different areas. And it's very important for the company because their priorities, their roadmaps, and product mixes are going to change over time. But at the same time, there are certain roles where domain expertise is very important. For example, identity, payments, security, cryptography. These are places where, yes, a new person can come in and build that skill set, but it does take time. So if you can get somebody who is a domain expert or well versed in those domain technologies, it is much easier for them to get started and do a good job right away. So these are the areas where people tend to hire both domain experts and high potential new people in junior roles who can be groomed into domain experts. And so it is very important as a candidate, you look at your past experience if you have any, or if you don't, look at the areas that you're most interested in or where you had some education, and figure out what domains you can get a leg up in and where you need to go as a generalist, and apply accordingly and talk about your accomplishments and education accordingly. Companies also really care about whether you really want this job, or are you coming because of either a brand name, or because you need a job, or this is just a practice interview. I have had instances in my career where I was not necessarily a good fit for the role, but I applied, and the recruiter and the hiring managers, when I was talking to them during the first rounds, they were so excited they were so excited because of my excitement that they brought me on site for phone loops. And they told me, you don't seem like the right fit on paper, but we still want you to come in. See, there are some big companies that everybody wants to go to, right? So everybody in their mind has some dream companies they want to go to. But then there are so many other great companies which might not be your first choice, but they're excellent companies to work with. But they don't want anybody and everybody. They want people who are happily coming there, who are going to be happy over there, and who will do great work because they are really interested in the space. Nobody wants to feel like they're the second pick or the third pick. And so when they see excitement, when they see that you're really interested in the job, they get excited about hiring you. So it is very important that you show your passion, that you show your interest in that role and the company. And finally, they also want to understand whether or not you will fit in the company culture. They want to know that it's going to be a good experience for you as well as the remaining team members when you work with each other. It does not help to hire someone if they are not going to be successful in the company. So They are trying to assess whether it's a good match or not. And to that end, the homework that you can do is to go and read up on the company, try to understand its value. Like Netflix has this whole culture deck that's pretty well known in the industry. Amazon has its leadership principles that are very well known in the industry. Google has its 3 values that are very well known in the industry. So try and understand the company culture. And another good source to understand that is your recruiter. When you are talking to the recruiter, ask about the company culture, ask what the values are for the company, and then be honest whether or not you're the right person. And if you are the right person for that company, do try to show that in the interviews as well. I'll give you a minute to digest this. Now let's move on. So now let's talk about some interviews do's and don'ts. And this is not a comprehensive list by any means. These are just common sense, logical things that you should do in your interviews or not do in the interviews. And I can see I have a half sentence here. Anyways, so don't be late and show up in your regular home clothes. I know we are all working from home. It's COVID time. And so you might feel that I could just show up the way I am. But please don't. Show the respect for this opportunity. Every company is spending time talking to you. And so show up in a way that shows respect. So please be on time and wear professional attire. By professional attire, I do not mean suits, by the way. That's a misconception that you have to wear a suit and that's how you look professional. But it should be clean. It should be ironed. If you want to look a little more professional, my tip to you is wear single colored, like single monochrome kind of like plain clothes, because the prints, some prints might be offensive to someone, some prints might be too colorful. Again, I'm not saying hide your personality. I'm just saying just look like you are here for a job interview. And the clothes don't need to be fancy or expensive or very businessy. They need to be clean. They need to be ironed, and they need to be not distracting. That's my general tip there. And by the way, just before you jump onto it, this is not a feedback for women. This is a feedback for everybody, every single person. And I'll tell you why. I have been in conversations with people who were wearing a wrinkly shirt, and I could not get that on my mind. And I was thinking, are they gonna, when I'm working with them, are they going to write documents which are not very well thought through? Like, does it show, to me personally, it shows that your lack of attention to detail. And so it is not a gender specific feedback. This is a general feedback for anybody who wants to look like they are on top of things. Okay, second thing, a lot of times I ask a question and people just jump into answering the question right away. They're eager. Sometimes I feel like they were not even listening to the full question and they were just trying to formulate their answer. And as soon as I was done answering the question, there they are, jumping into the question and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It's okay. This is not, yes, interviews are timed, but take a moment. Think about whether you really understood the question or not. Best tip that I can give is to repeat the question in your own words. So don't repeat the question I asked you verbatim, but repeat the question as you understood it. So I can see that you've understood my question. And you also know that you have understood the question correctly. And then clarify any assumptions. Are there any constraints? Are there any particular timelines we have to match? Are there any, who are we? And why are we building this thing? Or am I building this for the US market? Clarify those assumptions, because sometimes those assumptions can make a big impact on your answer. So just take a minute, and it's okay. Just say, give me a minute to gather my thoughts and think about it, and then get started. Next, don't just ramble and jump all over the place in a hard to follow manner. By that, what I mean is some candidates are brilliant, but they don't have a logical thought process. Some candidates have great insights, but a minute they're talking about a pain point, the other they're talking about pricing, then the other they're coming back, and then they're all over the place. And I'm having a hard time understanding what is going on. Why? Because it's very clear in their head what they're trying to build, but it's not clear to me yet. And so this is where frameworks are helpful. The frameworks are not to impress me that, oh, I know a framework. The frameworks are for you so you can organize your thoughts in a way that I can logically follow and understand. So use a mental framework for structure and effective communication. The most common structure for behavioral questions is STAR, which is situation, task, action, and results. The second most common framework for behavioral questions is DIGS, which is dramatize the situation, iterate through choices, go into the action, and summarize the result. So something similar, but pretty similar. When it comes to product design questions, circles is a very, very common framework that people use. Then there are some other product strategy frameworks that are available, but this is not one size fits all. So you have to pick the right framework for the right kind of question. But you don't have to stick to those. You can use your own framework. But that, remember, I told you, take a minute to think and then answer the question. Use that minute to come up with a mental framework and think, first I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about this. And because it's all virtual, if you were in person, I would write it out on a whiteboard, but otherwise write it on a paper, on a shared doc, and communicate. First, I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to close by covering this. Is that okay with you? And get the interviewer on board. Agree on that framework before you dive into the details, and then stick to that framework. And that's how you will be able to help the interviewer follow along and understand your thought process. And you will also come across as a very logical, methodical thinker. So that is where the value of frameworks is. They are a aid to help you, not necessarily to get a check mark. Although I have to say, some of them do work as a checklist also, and they're pretty effective. All right, next up, don't give vague, high-level, or very generic answers. I recently interviewed somebody on a go-to-market strategy question, and practically what they gave me was the textbook's 10 steps on go-to-market. And I'm like, I don't want that. I gave you a specific product. Tell me how you will take this product to market. And so don't give generic answers. Understand the prompt, get into details, and add examples. If you are doing a product design question and I'm asking you to design a refrigerator, get into the detail. Don't say, I'll just bring the MVP. What exactly will the MVP be? Or don't say, I will price this in a high value price and then a low value price. Like, what is that price? Get into the details. Show me that you can work through these things. And then in behavioral questions, add examples. So if I say, how do you work with engineering? Show me an example. Let me tell you about the time when I did this. Even if I have not asked you, tell me about a time, go ahead, give me examples. Let me see what it's like to work with you. Let me see how you do things. Then also don't just treat it like a Q&A session. You are not here so that somebody can ask you a question and then you answer and then you're quiet. Then another question, you answer and then you're quiet. It's a conversation. It's a two-way conversation. Just as much as they are trying to understand your point of view, your thinking thinking process, and your cultural fit, you should also be assessing them. You should be asking, is this the right kind of people I want to work with? Is this the type of company I want to work with? Is this the right product I want to work with? Based on what you're learning through this interview process, you are evaluating them also, and sometimes even volunteering information. So even if they don't ask you a particular area, if you think something is relevant, go ahead, offer that, have a conversation, build a relationship, build a connection if you could. Finally, don't be arrogant. Yes, there are several times people go to a company even though they are not interested in that company. They go and try to have practice, or they think they're too good and this position is either not as good or as low or whatever. Some people go in thinking that they are above the company. Please don't do that. If that is the case, you're better off not wasting their time and not going. Because if you go in there, if they are investing their time and resources in interviewing you, please show respect. Demonstrate your interest and passion for role and company. You always have a choice of saying no if you really are very good. If this is really not the right position, or if it's a junior position, you probably thought it was a lead position and then you came in and you realize it's not. Don't be arrogant. Walk through the process. If they offer you a role, you can always say no. And then, if you could, send a thank you note in the end. Show your appreciation for their time. And in general, be nice to work with, I guess, because nobody wants to work with jerks. All right, let's move on. So those were some of my generic interview tips for product management roles specifically. I'm going to now get into a Q&A question, but please do keep in touch with me and let me know what you learned today and share it with me. I am most active on my website, LinkedIn, and Instagram, but I am somewhat active on Medium and Facebook also, and Twitter is just there. So would love to connect with you on all of these platforms and cheer you on in your journey and watch you succeed from the sidelines. With that, let me get into the Q&A section. Okay, how do we do that? Project. I don't see any questions yet. What would be a good answer for how we take a product from concept to launch? Well, this particular area is called GTM, or go to market. There are frameworks available online, but you have to think about what kind of product it is. Is it a web product that's going to be released on a website? Or is it an app that you're trying to launch? Or is it a physical product that needs to be sold in stores? And based on the product, there are certain things that you will have to do differently. But in generally speaking, a go-to-market strategy consists of what's the right product that we are building, what's the right customer segment to target, how would you position your product so that it resonates with this particular target segment, how will you price the product, how will you acquire the customers, which is all your marketing efforts, how will you retain the customers, and how will you measure the success, whether or not you'll do a pilot, whether or not you will do an initial coupon, penetration pricing, like all of the steps that you will take, not necessarily what are in the product, but what is the product, all the way to how will I take it to my customers and how will I start selling that. That's the rough guideline of a go-to-market strategy. And depending on the type of product and depending on the other products that the company might already have, there will be nuances and differences in the answers. All right. Any good books for frameworks? Well, there are several books that have frameworks. Cracking the PM interview by Gail Lackman was the first one that came in this market. But the one that I really like is Decode and Conquer by Louis Lynn. And again, these I understand that most of you are either trying for your first role or transitioning into your first product management role. And for those, these books are very good. If you're an experienced PM, however, then I would actually suggest you to go a little bit more beyond and work on more complex frameworks. But for beginners, these two books are really good. For what purpose are we using frameworks? Well, we are using frameworks to help us communicate better and for us to be able to cover various different aspects of the thing without forgetting. So it's like a checklist, number one. Hey, I'm not forgetting XYZ. And second, if I'm going through it a step-by-step process, then the person who is interviewing me can understand me more clearly. That's why we are using frameworks. Okay, we all come from tech background. As PM, I sometimes deep dive with my agile teams how to keep a feature or capability on high level. What should be the strategy so you look as PM rather than an architect? So you need to practice, number one, and try to time bound your practice. So with my clients, when they come to me, I do mock interviews and I do coaching, but then I send them over to all these other platforms where they can practice. And I say, you have to get your answer between X number of minutes. And you have to spend this much time on this area, this much time on this area. And I just build that muscle over time. So that's what you have to do. You have to like practice. You have to, in your mind, when you're doing that 1 minute of thinking, you have to allocate some time to it also. And then you try to stick to that time. And you have to keep reminding yourself that and you offer the interviewer, I can go deeper if you want, but then you have to keep reminding yourself to come back up and cover that whole structure that you came up with. What do recruiters look for in shortlisting resume for a PM role? Experience or projects? Your experience is built up of projects, right? If I was looking at a particular candidate, I want to see a few things, okay? What's most valuable to me is the actual work they have done and the results they've gotten. I also want to see some career trajectory. If they are not a brand new candidate, if they are an existing candidate in this area, I want to see how their career have progressed, which kind of is like a signal to me on have they been growing or have they not been growing. I want to see ideally, I want to see results more than anything. And if I don't have the results, I at least want to see some hands-on work. And if that's not there, I want to see some education. And if that's not there, then some voluntary work that tells me that even though they have not worked in product management, they have worked in this area. And then in mentally, I can say, yeah, a lot of that skill would just transfer over. So there's a hierarchy of things that I want to see. And the best thing you can do if you don't have product management experience is to build something on your own, to write blogs about it, see if you can get an internship somewhere, even if it's unpaid, where you actually learn hands-on skill and you can show them. So while experience will probably trump your class projects, but I don't expect everybody to have real experience, especially not in their first roles. Okay, what kind of courses do you advise for PM interview prep? It's a great question. And the reason it's a great question is I actually teach a product management for product school, but I always tell them that, or anybody who asks me if they should go join my courses, I tell them, look, these courses should be for you to learn product management. You should not do a course as a way to get product management job. Because you come to my class in 8 weeks, I have, let's say, I normally have 20 students in one class. And for 8 weeks, I'm noticing them. I'm seeing a big variation. There are some that are dedicated, they are learning. With each homework assignment, they are showing me their passion, their knowledge. But then there are some who are very easy. They're coming to one class, they're not coming to another class. So having seen that, if somebody just comes to me and say, oh, I've done this particular course, I'll be like, were you like this candidate or were you like that candidate? I don't know. But if you show me that you've done this course and then you have applied this knowledge by building this, even if it's just simple pitch decks on your website, at least I can see. So I want you, if you are looking for courses, if you're looking for degree courses, I know Cornell has that a new product management degree. If you're looking for certificate courses, I can possibly send something out to Novira, and then we possibly put that step. I might be able to pull that up now also. Just hold on for 1 minute. I can actually talk about that right now because I just did that for another chat. So product management courses, general assembly, product school, those are some. They're product management certificates. So Cornell has one, UC Berkeley has another one. Then there's masters you can do in product management. So Carnegie Mellon has that, University of Liverpool, Monash University in Australia, and Poznan in Poland. So there are several new degrees also that are coming up. But here's the thing again, I want you to do these courses so you can learn and then apply it if you really want these courses to count. Okay, quickly, next question. How does moving laterally from analyst position to PM work? Well, ideally, or the most easy way of doing that is to do it within your own company, because people already know your work, they know your work ethic, they know you as a person, and so all they need to assess is whether or not you have the skills. And business analyst actually has a lot of good skills already in there. So just quickly going back, if you are thinking about this particular chart, then business analyst already covers the business aspect of it. To a certain extent, they can also cover market and organization. And so if you have the skills, either you've learned them on the job by shadowing somebody or by taking a course or whatnot, and you can communicate that, you're already halfway there. So it should not be very hard to convince current company people that you're a good fit for this. When you're going outside, the main thing is to be able to communicate what work you have done in business analyst products and mention what skills are transferable and how would you apply that for product management. So that's the job when you are writing your resume for an external company or when you're interviewing with them, is to how do you talk about your past work and how do you extract those transferable skills and communicate them. And the same thing goes for UX design, engineering also. Everybody has already covered part of this circle already. And so it's a matter of filling the gaps in the other circles as well as being able to talk about those. Results are based on data. It is apparent that all the design and PM roles are mostly based on analytics. If your experience and resulted in successful products, then in an interview, why basics are asked. Secondly, sometimes interviewers don't know vertical domain knowledge. It becomes difficult to prove in interview. Okay, let me read this one more time because it's a pretty big question and there are multiple questions in there. Yeah, simply because it's apparent that design and PM roles are mostly based on analytics, then why are we asking? Because every company does it differently. To be honest, I have worked in several different companies and the flavors of product management that I've seen are very, very different. I actually also within my clients, I see a big variability. I see people who are really, really strong in strategy, but really bad with technology and analytics. I see people who are really good with analytics, but not really good with strategy. So I see all different variables. So when companies are trying to hire, they are trying to minimize their risk. And so they are simply assessing you on different levels or different areas that matter to them. Okay. The next question that you're asking is, sometimes interviewers don't know vertical domain knowledge. It becomes difficult to prove an interview. So I'm a little bit confused on whether you're talking about the vertical domain knowledge that you already have from your current role or the knowledge for which you are interviewing. Because chances are, if you are interviewing for a particular role, they would put the interviewer who can actually assess that. If we are talking about the role or domain knowledge from previous role, if they don't care about it, then you don't need to prove so much. So I'm just a little bit confused on this question. Maybe you can put another comment and tell me more about what you're trying to ask here. Or give me a specific example. Okay, while you're writing that out, if there are any other questions, let me just take a look. Oh, there are some other, right name of books. There are some other books also that are pretty good, but they don't cover interviews specifically. They cover good product management. So there are a lot of good blogs. Marty Kagan, Lean Product Playbook, Thinking Fast and Slow, Swipe Unlock, Profit something. There's some profit thing book also. Okay, let's see. Current role versus new role are two different industries. Okay, so here, if current role and new role are two different industries, they probably don't want, they probably don't give enough weightage to the other kind of other industry. And honestly, why would they? See, they are hiring you to do a job. Whether you have done that in the past or not, that's important to them. But what else have you done? It's only important in the context of the transferable knowledge. If I'm hiring you for cryptography, and if you've done plenty of work in hardware supply chain, you know what? I just want to understand how you think about things and whether or not the way you were doing things is relevant here. But I really don't pay as much importance to how good you were in that role when it came to hardware specifically, because it's not relevant here. And so it's not, when an interview is not a way to just say all the good things you've done. It's like, see what a good job I'm going to do in your area. That's the mindset you have to go with. What are some things we should do to stand out? Side projects we should consider. For example, should it be fully built out or create an MVP, an open source project? All are great. All of these are great, by the way. And there is relative weightage. If you have a startup that you built, for example, and you were able to get customers, which means you've gone through the entire product lifecycle, it's obviously more weightage than a pitch deck where you have gone and analyzed the industry and you have some idea, but you've actually not executed. So there I can give you some strategy and some insight brownie points, but I can't give you execution points just yet. Whereas if you've built a startup, I can give you execution brownie points. Similarly, open source projects, I can give you a technical cred, I can give you some idea of execution, but I might not see how it works in your strategy. So they are all slightly different in terms of weightage. Okay, next question. When we are transitioning from engineering to PM, TPM, what should be the main focus while interviewing, specifically for a company like Amazon? So Amazon really, really cares about your Amazon leadership principles. And so they are looking for a person who has bias for action, who can, who's obsessed with customer, who stands up for the customer, who insist on higher standards. So just look up those principles. That's number one. That's you have to do, no matter which role you're going after. Coming from an SDE background, you're probably going to be okay in the technical interview. So now you have to show is your product thinking. And there will be product specific interviews there in that loop. So you have to make sure that you are, all the other things you can see in the resume, and then the stories you tell, they can see all of that. But product is something that you'll have to accentuate a little bit. Okay. What is the best combo you want to see in interviews? Tech versus domain versus strategy versus business. If I'm hiring for a specific role, then the domain will matter a little bit, yes. But the domain will not matter if I don't see, mostly I want to hire for aptitude. Because and aptitude and work ethic, sorry, those are the two things that I want to hire for, because those things I cannot train. Domain, I can train you, right? Even execution, I can train you a little bit, but I can't take a person who's not driven and turn it into a driven person overnight. I can't light that fire under you as well as you can do yourself, and I cannot give you that aptitude that you can develop. Like, those things take time. Those things take time. The other things I can coach for, other things I can train you for. These two things I look for because they are harder to coach. All right. I think we are at time. If you have any more questions, okay. How should we learn about a specific domain? There are plenty of blogs. There are plenty of websites. There are plenty of influencers in each area. And so if you are interested in a particular domain, search on LinkedIn, search on Google, read, see who has been publishing about those, follow those influencers, follow those writers, follow those books. That's a great way to go about them. Then every domain also has certain events. See if you can go and attend some of those events and actually meet people who are working in that area on day-to-day basis and build connections with them. All right. Thank you, everyone. I think we are at time. And again, I want to take a minute again to thank PWIC and for the great work they are doing. I have actually literally seen this organization being born in front of me, and it's amazing how much impact they've been able to create just in such a short period of time. I've also seen Indian women in computing being born in front of my eyes, and Nepali women in computing. And what I really love is how all of these key communities work with each other to to help out as many people as possible. And so I'm so happy that I was able to play a small role in this and connect with all of you. So please do connect with me, and all the best to you for your interviews. Thank you.